Chapter 26, Twin Peaks. Chapter 28, Dani and Abby. I headed out to the center of the arena as soon as Jade signaled it was okay. The crowd was deafening once I cleared the barrier. I shot to Joe's side immediately. "All right, you guys," I shot, taking Zek's limping body from Joe. "Good job."
"Yeah, we both did good, huh, Zek?"
Joe asked as he cautiously released his brother.
"Yeah, we did well, Joe,"
Zek shot.
"but I think—"
Zek doubled over, breathing hard. Joe and I dropped down next to him. Before I could blink, we were standing inside the barrier. "What was that?" I replied, spinning around. The entire Legion was there. Jade kneeled, healing Zek with his power as I surveyed the layout. Everyone seemed as surprised as I was.
"It was me,"
Pete replied.
"No need in wasting time we didn't have."
"I guess," Eve shot. "But couldn't you have given us a heads up?" Pete shook his head as he stared down at Zek, concerned.
"No, we needed all the time we could to prep our strategy for their final 3 contenders," Pete responded. "I didn't have the time to coordinate everyone. With Jacob's help, I stopped time, and it didn't take long to corral everyone." "Zek, are you okay?"
Joe asked, kneeling.
"I'm fine,"
Zek replied, pushing him away.
"What? What did I do?"
Joe responded.
"I don't know,"
Zek shot.
"After what happened, I know you were being controlled by Kel, but the things you said when we were fighting Ruth and Uni, I think we shouldn't be brothers right now."
Joe looked surprised and blown away by Zek's words.
"But Zek,"
Joe shot.
"Zek, I'm sure your brother didn't mean to hurt you,"
Danielle added, kneeling down to co-sign for Joe.
"It was just the stress of the battle. There isn't enough time for things to come out how you want. And trust me, I know. Sometimes emotions can make you say things you really don't mean." I tried to get an idea of what she was going through. My assumption was she was next on deck. It had to be heavy on her mind. I blocked it out, dealing with the conflict at hand. "Yeah, Zek, it was just emotion," Sam seconded. "Yeah, I promise, I didn't mean it,"
Joe spouted in a begging manner.
"It was that stupid Kel. He made me say that stuff." "Joe, I'm not saying he didn't," Zek added, "but you always do that. You're my brother. You really think I didn't know how you felt about me? I always needed to be smarter so I could protect you, so we could protect each other." "You didn't have to protect me, you see?" Joe added. "I protected you." "You did, Joe, and I'm proud of you, but you shouldn't have had to," Zek added. "What did Mom say before she left for her mission on Hyerman?" "Always look out for each other," Joe responded. "And we have. Look what we did today." "No, Joe, that's not all. She said we needed to help each other get stronger," Zek replied, grimacing as Jade finished. "And it wasn't what we did. It's what you did. I was just in the way. What you did today opened my eyes. I'm what's holding you back. I'm always there over your shoulder trying to protect you. Maybe that's why I couldn't notice what you could do on your own. And worst of all, I was always so mad about your attitude. Maybe it wasn't just you who got mad at me. Maybe it was me getting mad at you too. You'll do better with someone else. Maybe someone who trusts you, like Sam. We don't make a good team. Not yet. Maybe we will once I learn to not see you in the same protective light. It's just now, I need some time."
Joe stood emotionless as Zek fought to his feet.
"Just for a little while, Joe. We're around each other too much, and it's preventing me from seeing you get better," Zek shot. "I'm going to the med corps to get myself patched up. Just stay here."
Joe breathed in hard, trying hard to hide his emotion, but he didn't say anything. He stared at Joe as he limped toward the portal hole. We all stood, not knowing what to say. Zek and Joe not together? It was hard to imagine. Joe visually started to tear up.
"Joe, are you okay?"
Sai replied, walking toward him.
"No!"
he screamed. He threw a hard wind gust, destroying a wall as he stormed off. "Joe," Sam replied, chasing after him. "I'll be back, you guys." We all nodded as he shot off. "That's tough," Luke added. "They're children," Max continued. "Children are resilient. We just need to give them a little time. They'll sort it all out later. Right now, we need to focus on finishing this duel. It's only a matter of time before this injury intermission is over."
I agree,
Pete cut in, catching everyone's attention.
"So what are we going to do?"
Sai pushed.
Uriah?
Pete replied, turning. He nodded, signaling for everyone to gather around.
Now, right now, we have the advantage, but it's slight. Let's be real. The twins eliminated 3. That is more than we could have asked for, but they were their 3 weakest guys. We're down 1 Dom. They have 2, and a Vert who is as skilled as anyone on our team. Trust me, the last 3 will not be eliminated as quickly as the first 3. Now we have our 1 Dom, me and Dani, Uriah added. So my guess is they're going to conserve their 2 Doms and send out Abby. We'd be better served doing the same, but it's just an assumption. My guess is we'd be just as... I'll go,
Danielle broke in.
Are you sure?
Pete pressed. She stared out at the arena, answering Pete's statement with a glance. Abby stood in the middle of the arena as the proctor signaled the resuming of the duel. The tension was so thick I could actually feel Danielle's energy fluctuating. It was eerie. It wasn't anger or nervousness. It was a stern determination as she prepped herself.
Yes, I'm sure, she replied. I made a promise.
Wait, you're not about to throw the fight because of your hang-up with that Abby girl, are you? Luke shot. Sean chuckled, shaking his head. What? Luke asked, turning to him. It's the exact opposite, I added. Danielle stared sternly at the arena as she tied her hair into a ponytail. She took a deep breath, calming herself as she walked out of the barrier. What do you mean it's the exact opposite, Tim? Luke poked. It was weird, but I was there when she ran into Abby in the hallway, I explained. The promise wasn't to take it easy on her. It was a promise to give her the fight of her life.
Wow, Sai added. How? I couldn't do it.
I turned to her, thrown by her words. What do you mean? I shot.
Well, you heard how close she said she and that Abby girl were, she followed up.
She stared at me with a look that made me uneasy. It was similar to the one she gave me the morning our journey began. It was one of the awkward times where her beauty was intimidating. I felt like I was staring at my best friend's wife, and it instantly made me feel guilty. There was nothing wrong with thinking she was beautiful, but for some reason I couldn't fight feelings of guilt.
Tim?
She replied, raising her brow, trying to signal to me that my stare was becoming awkward. The awkwardness of the conversation going on inside my head caused me to ignore her obvious cue. I just continued looking into her eyes, involuntarily nodding.
Hello? You want to stop staring at her like she's an alien?
Eve cut in. I quickly caught myself as Sai chuckled, trying to kill the vibe, bashfully lowering her head, both flattered and confused. Wait, what? No, I shot, shaking it off, trying to save face. I was thinking about what she said. I'm sure you were, Jacob added. Yeah, you looked deep in thought. Shut up, Jake, I shot. I never really thought about it that way. That's all. You know, the way Sai said it. It's like having to fight Pete or Sai. I just don't think I'd have the nerve to fight either of them. Jacob eased up, nodding as if to be understanding the reason for my actions. Eve, on the other hand, didn't seem as pleased.
But me, Beth, and Sam, oh, you'd tear us limb from limb, she replied.
Yeah, Snubosaurus in the room, Sam seconded, walking back just as Eve finished her words. Tell us how you truly feel. Jacob and Luke chuckled, staring at each other immaturely. Seriously, you know what I meant. I've known them since we were in diapers. I couldn't imagine fighting someone that I've known as long as we've known each other, I shot, shaking my head at their attempt to give me a hard time. Even Sam chuckled playfully.
So serious, dear?
Eve replied in a prissy manner. I held my stomach, pretending to be laughing.
Well, make yourself clearer next time, Sai replied, playfully bopping me on the head. It's not just us anymore.
I'm glad you guys are having a cute little moment here, but, Luke added, there are more pressing issues. There was a cold feel that came over everyone watching Danielle as the proctor explained the rules. The two girls nodded, accepting the proctor's words. Danielle clenched her fist and turned her wrist as if to be preparing herself. Abby stared at the proctor exclusively, not wasting a waning glance in Danielle's direction. Danielle stared at her almost as if she was ignoring the proctor.
Man, Dani, looks like she is somewhere else, Eve replied nervously.
She did. She could have been trying to psych herself up, but looking at the way her shoulders slumped and her eyes danced, it was hard to believe she was really about to put her all into fighting Abby.
Yeah, I hope her head isn't messed up, Sai added. It's like Tim said, I couldn't imagine having to battle my best friend.
Dani is a strong girl. She'll get it together, Jacob replied, nodding. Besides, this means a lot to her. I've watched her practice until she dropped from the day we got here. And if that girl wants a fight, she's going to get one. He smiled, staring at Danielle as he spoke. As he did, Sean chuckled under his breath. Abby is my best friend, Sean added. She's an overachiever. She's busted her butt to get where she is. I'd strap in because this has all the makings of a dogfight.
Do you both understand? The proctor asked.
They both nodded, finally making eye contact. The proctor turned to the crowd, signaling by raising his arms, causing them to erupt in anticipation. He turned to each girl one last time, non-verbally checking, as they both once again nodded in his direction.
Well, this 4th Legion duel will begin, he shouted.
The crowd erupted, expecting a fast start like the ones they had gotten since the beginning of the trials, but this one was different. Abby and Danielle just stood there.
Abby?
Danielle replied, hushing the crowd.
What is she doing?
Luke added.
Shh,
Sai shot. Abby sighed, visibly frustrated by Dani's demeanor.
Dani,
she replied in a pleading tone.
You promised. I know, I can't help it. I just want to say I'm really sorry,
Danielle replied, tears forming in her eyes.
I should have apologized right away, and I know it's too little too late, but I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I should have tracked you down and begged for your forgiveness. You were my best friend, my only friend. You were the first person to accept me for who I was, and you deserved better.
Abby forcibly looked away, clearly hiding her own tears before taking a deep breath and continuing.
I wasn't the only person who accepted another person when no one else would, Dani. That's what you never understood. I wasn't doing you a favor by being your friend. You were a great person from the moment I met you. You were the first truly nice person I met when I arrived, she continued, finally showcasing tears of her own.
I stood, my heart going out to the both of them. The girls were a mess next to us watching the exchange.
You're hard because you have to be, and you taught me to do the same. You taught me to stick up for myself. You helped me gain a backbone. It was us against everyone else, and we loved it. We didn't look to fit in. We didn't care what people thought about us. We acted as if we were the only 2 kids in the school. They made fun of us, they talked about us, and we helped each other get through it, she continued. But I just got tired of fighting. There was no need to keep everyone away anymore. They opened up to me. It was a chance to make peace. After you told me how long people had misjudged and stereotyped you, I thought you'd be happy too. Maybe I shouldn't have assumed. I hated that people didn't know the real you, the things they said about you. I couldn't believe how wrong they were about you." Danielle nodded, wiping tears, looking at the sky in a regretful manner. I could feel her feelings, her biorhythms, and it wasn't pain or anger she was feeling, it was an abundance of joy. The weight of her past had to be weighing on her. She was finally getting Abby's side of the story, and every word seemed to invigorate her. "When I came to you, I never considered you would believe I was leaving you," she continued. "I would never... I know, Abby, it's just, you were my first friend. You were the first person I let in. I was afraid and jealous. I'm sorry about calling you that, and if I could take it back, I would have never said those words to you," Danielle replied, cutting her off. "I was so hurt, and I felt betrayed. It was so stupid, but I wanted to hurt you, and it was the first thing that came to mind." "Your words hurt, Dani, but that wasn't what hurt the most," Abby replied. "How little you must have thought of me to believe I would ever do that to you. Because of that, your slur toward me gained weight, and the fact that you never sought me out to explain things only made your words more concrete in my mind. I wanted to call you every time something great happened to me, every time something we used to laugh at came on, or just to see how you were doing. But the more time went by, the more convinced I was that the only person who felt that way was me." Danielle shook her head, almost smiling. "No, that wasn't true at all. At times, I even tapped into your BAU feeds to check in on you and see how things were coming along for you. Every news article, every interview, I had them all. I wanted to tell you a million times, but the pain was so bad after we fell out. I convinced myself you would never forgive me," Danielle continued. "I was a coward." Abby nodded. "And so was I," Abby replied. "But..." As she spoke, the gravity around her seemed to go in slow motion as she hovered high in the air. She was a law-vert, and the way she effortlessly controlled gravity, things were about to get hairy. "You made me a promise," Abby continued. "I want to see how good you have really gotten. I want to see how strong I've gotten. When this is all over, I'll know if you truly are sorry or if you are just messing with my mind. The Dani I knew would never take it easy unless she didn't see the person she was fighting as her equal." "You're talking about the beginning of your training," Danielle replied with a smile. "Exactly. If you really mean everything you said, then this fight will show that you truly see me as your equal," Abby shot. Danielle's eyes lit up at the sound of Abby's words. Her power surged to the point that it began to burrow into the ground she stood on. It was almost like she was fighting for her friendship. If any of us had any doubts about her giving her all, that notion went out the window. Danielle was going to do everything in her power to make sure Abby understood how important she was to her. "All right, Abby," Danielle replied, rising into the air until they were parallel. "If that's what you want." "That's exactly what I want," Abby responded. Sizzles! As she finished her sentence, she moved her arm, sending a flying gravity shot toward Danielle. Danielle closed her eyes without even flinching as the gravity orb shot toward her. It exploded and dissipated as she reopened them. "Come on, Abby. If you want my respect, you're going to have to do better than that," Danielle shot. Swish! Sizzle! Swish! Sizzle! Swoosh! Abby smiled as her hands began to move into overdrive. She sent shots at Danielle in rapid succession. Danielle blocked them all effortlessly. "Shoot as many as you want. I have that element broken down," Danielle replied. "I know the composition. It'll never get through my shield." "What is she talking about?" I replied, turning to Pete. "Well, law-verts, our bread and butter is our ability to compose chemical elements. You know, solids, gas, and liquids," he replied. The way we choose to use it is diverse, but the key is our chemical makeup. Once our chemical makeup is exposed, our maneuvers are easier to counterbalance. Danielle has her chemicals down. She's created the perfect counterbalance. She's an elemental, but she fights like a bird. The way she blends and chemically combines her liquids, she fights like a bird. Her father was a Heaven Realm chemist before going into politics. It only makes sense she would be adept in chemical bonds, Jacob added. How do you know? I shot, turning to him. How do you think? She told me, Jacob shot. Danielle exploded each orb on contact with her shield. I told you, Danielle replied before stopping as she looked into Abby's eyes. Abby stared over her head with a smile that was telling. We slowed, following her gaze along with Danielle. We stopped our chat and our focus shot to the scene that had formed high above her head. The gravity particles had formed into sickle-like spikes hovering over her head. Crap, Danielle replied. As she did, Abby swung her arms forward, causing the sickles to vibrate fast and hard. Twirl! Danielle began to spin at warp speed, pulling in water from the air until it looked like she was inside a human ball. She spun faster and faster as Abby threw her arms down, forcing the sickles to follow suit. We all stood watching in awe. Danielle had somehow, as a liquid elemental, created an ice barrier that intercepted each spike. The crowd cheered loudly as the spike lodged into the ice sphere on contact. Nice job, Dani, Sai replied. Abby looked surprised as well. Crack! Boom! Danielle hammered the ice, causing it to crack, then shatter as she emerged from the capsule. Good one, she replied, ripping off her shirt sleeve. She had small cuts all over her arm. Her eyes lit up as she used the healing technique to heal herself. Man, they aren't playing, I shot. She could have torn her to shreds with that technique. Yeah, man, so much for a friendly competition, Pete seconded. She ripped her other sleeve off to match her torn one as she stood up determined. Now that the formalities are out of the way, she replied, dropping the sleeve as she walked toward Abby. Let's test how powerful you've truly gotten. I'm standing right here, Abby replied. Bring it! Vanish! Bam! The two disappeared, flash-stepping toward the other. They collided with a crackling explosion. The power of their collision was so devastating, it destroyed the surrounding terrain and sent a vibration throughout the stadium, causing the barrier that we stood behind to shake. The two smiled at each other as their fists connected. Seriously? Sam replied, turning to Jade. Jade stood, shaking his head. Even the betas seemed amazed at their power. Cadmiel walked forward, unable to believe what she was watching. Man, Abby's been holding out on us, Cadmiel replied, staring in awe. Let's go, Abby, Sean replied, cupping his mouth excitedly as the two girls shot, trying to outpower the other. Hey, Sai shot, turning to Sean, playfully offended. I'm with you guys stride for stride, but Abby's my ace, he shot. I don't know where I would be without that girl. I may have left the Alpha House, but Abby is a different story. Sai gave the boy a pressing look that caused the boy to lower his head bashfully. So, you're sweet on her? Sai responded via BAU, causing Sean to stare at her stubbornly, refusing to answer, before shooting a cynical look toward the girl. You should know looks can be deceiving. I mean, if I went by looks alone, I believe you've been in love with Tim since we were in kindergarten. But we both know that's not the way you feel, right? Just good friends, he shot, causing the girl to become visibly flustered as he winked at her. I guess one could say that, but then again, if it was, would that be so bad? She shot, causing the boy to covertly nod, accepting her retort. Look, he moved to reply, as an explosion let out, catching his attention. Vanish! Fit, 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 wham! Fit, 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 wham!
The two flashed again, appearing in different spots around the arena. Each time they landed, they sent punches and kicks at each other perfectly. Their techniques was flawless. They blocked each other's shots, canceling them on contact.
Man, she's good,
Eve replied, blown away.
you think?
Sai seconded sarcastically. You weren't lying about them knowing each other, I shot. It's like they know each other's combinations by heart. Appeared. Danielle appeared seconds later, flashing to a vacant spot. Before she could fully materialize, Abby followed suit, but the small lag was all Danielle needed. Too slow, Danielle poked, lowering her shoulder. Shoulder! Danielle rammed her with a flying shoulder charge. Abby groaned as Danny's shoulder lodged into her gut, knocking the wind from her body. She flipped as Danielle rose, aiming a strike in her direction. Solar shot! Danielle commanded. She covered her body in electricity and began to spin until she looked like a falling star. She collided with a nearby wall as Abby narrowly dodged, spinning horizontally. Static shot, Abby commanded. Shock! She landed, sending her fist into the ground. Danielle tried to move, but the momentum of her last attack had her in a stasis. She was vulnerable, and from the looks of things, Abby was about to pounce. Danielle's eyes grew as she braced herself for Abby's counter. Shock! Danielle convulsed violently as her body's light energy seemed to go haywire. She was a sitting duck. Gotcha, Abby replied. Kick! Boom! Abby charged, flashing into a leaping front kick that caught Danielle flush. She flipped across the terrain, landing hard against a nearby wall as debris landed all over her. Man, what happened? Sam asked, turning to Uriah. Uriah smiled, scratching his chin. Abby used her static energy to overcharge her nervous system, he replied. It was pretty sneaky. It looked like she intentionally allowed herself to be hit so that Dani would drop her guard. She had her scouted. She knew what her go-to move was, and she had countered it. I think I like this chick. We all turned to him, surprised, with Sean's eyes landing on the boy first. What? I have a soft spot for smart girls, he shot. Of course, I want Dani to win, but I can still admire talents, can't I? Yeah, I'm not sure it's the talent you're admiring, Eve shot. If it was anyone else, maybe, but with Uriah, I can't imagine him finding anything else to admire, Jacob intervened. You never could resist that freaking opening, Abby replied, walking toward Danielle. We were caught off guard as Danielle's hands emerged from underground, gripping Abby's ankle. And you could never resist that one, Danielle replied. Shoot, Abby replied as she looked down. She shot into the air, still holding Abby. Abby fought to get loose, but Danielle had a firm grip. She cocked Abby's entire body back like she was readying a hammer strike. I always told you to watch your feet, Danielle boasted. Hurl! She hurled her like she was throwing a discus. Abby crashed into the arena, creating a gigantic crater as the crowd exploded in cheers. For reference, Sai, if we ever have a falling out, Eve added. Gotcha. A no-holds-barred grudge match is definitely off the list, Sai poked. Flash! Before we could blink, Abby was back on the attack. Fit, fit, fit! They attacked each other, swinging and blocking at will, canceling out each other's blows once again. Gravity push! Abby's eyes lit up for the first time, creating a gravitational push that sent Danielle flying in the opposite direction. Danielle slowed herself before she hit the wall, her eyes lighting up once again. Let's see who's stronger, your gravity or my wind, Danielle shot. Like I said, I want your best. Bring it, Abby shot, amping up her shot. Whoosh! Danielle's wind shot toward Abby. The girl's gravity was radiating a beautiful burgundy light as the gravity created an orb that encased her as she collided with Danielle's wind. The two strained as their powers clashed in a fight of wills.
Come on, Dani!
Sai screamed.
Let's go, Abby! Bounce this Barbie!
Cadmiel shot. It turned into a shouting match between the two legions as everyone jumped in after that. The two girls strained, almost exemplifying the battle between our two legions. Strike after strike, neither backing down, constantly one-upping one another, yet inevitably ending up a deadlock.
I see you fortified that inner shell, Danielle shot. It's impressive, but it still has its flaws. Let me show you.
The girls were fighting tooth and nail, but Dani's demeanor was more like a coach than a competitor.
Dani, stop it, she shot angrily. This isn't a training session. You said you weren't going to cut me any slack.
Dani smiled, raising a brow as Abby quickly caught on to the girl's plot.
You snake?
She shot, quickly scrambling.
Hey, be the smartest person in the room, Abby, remember?
Dani shot as her eyes lit up. Whoosh! Danielle upped her wind force as Abby grimaced.
All right, yeah, let's go, Dani!
Eve screamed, cupping her mouth to drown out the voices of the betas.
I'm not done yet, Dani,
Abby shot.
I'm not the same girl from years ago. I can promise you that.
Whoa! Abby's orb doubled in size, overpowering Dani's wind shot.
I'm not the same girl,
Abby repeated, motivating herself.
Neither am I,
Danielle added, taking her power up as well. We stood watching in awe as they destroyed the arena with their power display as the crowd went crazy.
Is that all you got, Dani? Come on!
Abby shot, smiling as her power kicked up a notch. Dani stared at the girl, proud of her maturation. Something in her wanted to bow out and give the girl to win. She wanted to hug her and finally tell her how proud she was of her. But the sound of our voices cheering her on forced a resolve into her as she shook her head.
I'm super proud of what you've become, Abby, but I can't let you have this, she replied,
meeting the girl's power output. Boom! The two exploded with power. The power exploded like two counteracting bonds. The momentum of the shots sent both girls flying in opposite directions, slamming into adjacent walls. We watched in awe as they both lay lifeless. Whoa! I shot, staring in awe. Sean's prediction was eerily accurate. These girls knew each other too well for one to best the other. They countered each other perfectly. Eve grabbed my hands nervously. I smiled, clenching the girl's hand, flattered, but Eve didn't notice. A second passed before she released my hand apologetically. I gave her a smile, causing her to sigh, exhausted with herself.
Sorry, I forgot we were, you know,
she responded via BAU. Two pillars crumbled, forcing us both to turn to the fight, still impressed by the display of talent. This was going to be a battle that hinged on who made the first mistake. My gosh, based how this has gone so far, Sam shot, mouthing my thoughts. I can't tell who's going to win. The blow knocked the wind out of both the fighters as Danielle struggled to her feet, with Abby coming right behind her. Gravity push, Abby replied. Push! It was a smart move. She knew she wouldn't be able to beat Danielle to the punch. She had to buy time by taking a shot before Danielle could react first. It was calculated. She was quick on her feet, but I don't know if her shot would give her the time she was looking for.
Danielle, look out!
Eve screamed. A determined look showed on Dani's face, surprising everyone. Everyone expected her to dodge, but she didn't. She took a deep breath and stood staring at the incoming shot.
What are you, crazy, Dani? Move!
Sai shot hysterically. I told you she was going to throw the match, Luke shot.
No, she's not. Danielle wouldn't do that, Sai shot. She made a promise. There has to be a method to her madness. Whether she is or she isn't, that shot is packed. Taking it head on is suicide, Cadmiel intervened. Yeah, Benjamin added. It's game over. She can't withstand that. It looks like Barbie is throwing in the towel, if you ask me. My gosh, will you please shut up? Sai shot in a frustrated tone, turning to the boy. Benjamin flexed at the sound of her words before chuckling to himself. See, there you go, tell me what to do again, he added, meeting her gaze. Big talk coming from a girl who was excluded from the battle. Yeah, lucky for you, Eve shot. Did you see Sai during Pete's trial? She mopped the floor with half your squad. The boy showed visible signs of consideration before rolling his eyes with an exaggerated sigh. You guys really need to learn the difference between impressive and elite, he shot. Talk to me when you guys can show me more than potential. Luke stepped in his sight's path as a faint light appeared in his eyes. Oh, I will, Luke shot. Pete, Sam, and I were too focused on the battle to interject any words, as Dani continued to power up in anticipation of meeting Abby's shot head-on. Dani, get out of the way, Pete added. There's no way that technique is going to work. Trust her, Jacob shot. It's hard to when it looks like she's throwing the match, Sam cut in. His words raised the tension. Was she really doing that? The way she walked into the shot's path was suspect, to say the least. Why would she take it on head first when she could have easily dodged it? It didn't make sense. No way, she shot. Spin! She melded a strong wind gust with the gravity, causing it to spike in energy. She moved her body seamlessly, as if to be performing a technique. She gently melded Abby's shot and her energy together in a masterful show of control. She can do that? Ben wondered aloud, turning to Cadmiel. There's no way. That's a high-gen technique. Only elites can do that, Cadmiel replied. What's a high-gen technique? I replied, turning to Jacob. It's a very delicate technique. It's a transfer and melding of your adversary's energy with your own. It is extremely hard to do, especially under these circumstances, but if done properly, it amplifies the energy shot times 10 and sends it back at the attacker. The most seasoned light guardsmen struggle to do it, he explained. It's effective but risky. One bad move and it can literally combust inside your body. I can't believe she's attempting it. I guess she figures it was the only way to end the stalemate between the two, but it's too dangerous. Come on, Dani, what are you doing? Ugh! She grimaced as she fought with everything she had to control the energy in the palm of her hand. The momentum and power of the shot caused her to spin to corral the immense shot. She grimaced angrily, forcing resolve into herself as she contained the shot and launched it back at Abby. Oh my gosh, she did it, Sai replied, covering her mouth as she turned to us in awe. Let's go, Luke replied, clapping exuberantly. I can't believe she pulled it off, Eve seconded. A look of terror covered Abby's face as the shot tore up the environment as it made its way back to her. Man, that shot's going to obliterate Abby, Cadmiel shot. Abby, what are you doing? Get out of the way! Abby ignored her, staring forward, just as determined as Danielle was. Abby, what are you doing? Sean whispered to himself, nervously covering his head. No, I got this, Abby replied. Spin! She mirrored Danielle's movements as everyone looked on in awe. The power of that shot! If what Jacob said is true, it's 10 times what it was before. There's no way she can curb it, Pete added, staring forward. It's going to combust. It could destroy her. Abby, stop, Danielle warned, as the shot streamed toward Abby, continuing to tear up everything in its path. What are you doing? It's too unstable. You're not going to be able to control it. Just get out of the way. No, Abby shot. I'm not stupid. You've boxed me in. If I dodge, you got me pinned. It's over if I do that. This is my only chance.
Danielle shook her head.
It's over either way, Danielle replied. But if you dodge, at least you won't combust. You can't take in that much energy. It's way beyond your limit. I don't know when you're going to get it. I'm not the same person, Dani,
Abby replied.
Whoa!
We all stared in awe. Somehow Abby had created a barrier that slowed the wind. It was like her light energy had enveloped her and created a layer of atmosphere that physically slowed the trajectory of the shot. Her eyes burned like two stars as she willed the very environment to bend to her will.
You have got to be kidding me,
Pete replied.
Come on, Abby,
Cadmiel shot with her fingers crossed.
You got this, kid. Spin.
She mimicked Danielle's move, catching the shot as she turned. It looked painfully hard as she grunted, trying to control the massive energy shot. She grunted, fighting with everything she had to control the gravity around her. Danielle's eyes grew larger as we could barely believe what we were witnessing.
I'm not going to lose to you,
Abby grunted as she forced the energy to follow her lead.
Whoosh!
She curbed the energy, using everything she had to angle the massive energy ball. She fell forward, launching the energy back toward Danielle. She fought to one knee, panting, out of breath, as she stared at her former best friend with a proud smile.
That's impossible,
Danielle replied, surprised by Abby's display.
That was amazing,
Eve shot, shaking her head.
She just turned the tables on Danielle,
Pete shot, as Abby fought to her feet, readying herself.
This match is over. She's going for the kill shot the minute Danielle tries to dodge.
No way, Eve shot angrily.
I'm not giving up on Dani. She'll find a way out.
Pete shook his head pessimistically.
Abby took the only way out and doubled the risk,
he cut in.
I don't care how smart Dani is. She's not going to get out of this one. There's just no exit. Like Abby said before, to clear the blast radius, it's going to take a pretty steep jump. And with Abby downwind, she's going to meet her at the end of her trajectory and bang, checkmate.
We all stood, anticipating Danielle's next move, but she didn't make one.
What is she doing?
Eve shot. Danielle didn't flinch. She stared at the incoming missile shot with the same determination as before. She was crazy. That shot was 100 times the initial shot, and she was going to try to control it again.
Danielle, just toss in the towel. It's over,
Abby screamed in a pleading tone.
No, it's not,
Danielle shot.
What, is she crazy?
Luke shot, concerned.
She barely controlled the other shot. She's going to kill herself. Danielle, she has you cornered. Just bow out. You fought well. You've already made it into the academy. There's nothing to be ashamed about,
Pete cautioned. Danielle shook her head as tears formed slowly.
I don't care about losing to Abby, she replied.
Her demeanor threw me. I could understand it if that was her angle, but what would be the purpose if losing was irrelevant? What was she trying to prove?
It's more than that to me. I made a promise to do my best and...
We all stood, yet again blown away by what we were witnessing. Danielle powered up, sending a wind shot that stopped the shot in its path, slowing its trajectory.
These Heaven Realm kids are ridiculous,
Beth replied, staring in awe.
You're telling me,
Eve added. Cadmiel chuckled, shaking her head sarcastically.
Cute, but she still has to control it, and that's going to be next to impossible,
Cadmiel shot. Nothing is impossible here, Jacob shot, catching everyone's attention. It was weird how they reacted. Cadmiel didn't say a word. She just stared at him, almost intimidated in her demeanor. The rest of the squad was no exception. There were no sly replies or shocks. They gave him the utmost respect. I guess it made sense considering his showing in his match. Normally it would have been annoying, but at the time, I was more focused on his words. "Faith dictates reality," he replied, smiling. "Possibilities are as endless as the belief you have in Emmanuel and Father Yahweh." His words rung in my ears in a déjà vu type manner. John had said the same words. The other members of our legion looked confused, but Sam and I had first-hand experience with the possibilities of faith. We understood his words wholeheartedly as I nodded in agreement. "Yeah, if she believes she can do it," I shot. "But it's not only her faith, it's ours as well. So if you have doubts, lend her your faith energy." We all focused in at the sound of my voice, spiking Danielle's power. "You guys can believe all you want," Benjamin shot. "There's nothing you can do to help her control a shot that big." Sam smiled big. "Then you obviously haven't witnessed the power of prayer," Sam replied. "Tim's right. Come on, guys." We all joined hands as the alphas looked on in awe as Danielle's power continued to spike. Boom! She met the shot head on, absorbing it on contact. "Come on, Dani, we got you. Where your faith fails, ours won't," Eve added, causing Danielle's power to spike once again. "You can do it, Dani, we got you," Sai added. Whoosh! Danielle grimaced as she slowly began to curb the transferred energy. "How?" Leo exclaimed, shaking his hand. "How can they be doing this?" Cadmiel shook her head, annoyed at our display. We could actually see the power transferring from us into her as she continued to force the shot around. Rip, rip, rip! Her armor was tearing at the seam as she finally forced the shot around. "That's not possible," Abby replied, shaking her head. "Impossible!" "Ah!" Danielle replied, finally releasing the shot. "I'm not the same either, Abby," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "I'm no longer alone. I have friends who believe in me now. And just like I don't want to let you down, I won't let them down either." "Abby, do something," Cadmiel warned. Abby stood like a deer in the headlights as the shot spiraled back toward her. I don't think it ever dawned on her that her shot could be reversed. She had no move to make. She was stuck. Even with all my abilities to break down weaknesses, I couldn't find an out. No matter where she went, she wasn't going to escape the path of that shot. "There's nothing I can do," Abby replied, stepping back, frightened. "I'm trapped." Barrier! Abby used the power she had to create a barrier like before, but this time the shot burrowed through it twice as fast, without losing any momentum. "Abby," Danielle replied in a pleading tone. It had finally become apparent to Danielle that she had put Abby in a coffin corner, and she had no way out. She looked terrified at the proposition. Barrier! Abby tried feebly to make the barrier denser, but the shot burned through it at an accelerated rate. Blood flooded out Abby's mouth and eyes as she fought to summon the power she had before. "It's going to destroy her," Cadmiel shot, terrified. "Oh my gosh," Beth added, shaking her head sympathetically. Time stood still as I watched what happened next. Danielle flashed over the shot, burning her right arm just from grazing the fringe part of the energy ball. She fought through the pain, landing in front of Abby, blocking the shot's path to the girl. "Dani, you're crazy if you think I'm going to let you do this," Abby shot. "It's the least I can do," Danielle replied. We all looked at each other, unable to grasp what was going on. She had thrown herself in the path of her shot, our shot. She was going to be obliterated. "She's crazy," Luke added, almost breathless. "We have to do something." "We can't," Sai shot. "We can't stop that thing." "Well, we can try," Sam shot. "You ready, Tim? Jake?" "You bet," I shot, powering up. No, Jacob shot, surprising. Why? Sam replied, pleading. All you'll be doing is going up in flames with her, Jacob replied, talking sense into us. That is a power shot. That is the concentrated light energy of every remnant on our team. Do you have any idea how powerful that is? A lightning bolt is like a battery spark compared to that thing. Well, we can't just sit here and watch, Eve shot, turning to us. We're not going to, Luke shot. You ready, Jake? Jake nodded as Abby stared at Danielle in awe. Dani, get out of the way, Abby pleaded, fighting to her feet. You already apologized. I don't know what's going to happen from this power, but I'll take it all before I let you take that thing on. I'm not losing you again, Danielle shot, meeting the girl's gaze. Not again. Abby shook her head as tears rolled down her face. She smiled at her longtime friend before taking a deep breath and showing a determined stare. Well, I may not be able to stop you, but... she replied, grabbing Danielle. The light grew large as it drudged through Abby's force field. They both embraced each other as the shot finally made it to them. They cowered as the shot exploded. Dani! Sai screamed, shielding herself as the light detonated. Absorb! I quickly grabbed Eve, covering her as Sam grabbed Beth, and Pete dove, covering Sai. We turned our backs to the explosion as the girls fought to free themselves. We were surprised to turn and see the light slowly vanish without exploding. We fought to our feet. A figure emerged as a wormhole evaporated. Luke? Sai replied, blinking like she was trying to get something out of her eye. Luke and Jacob stood in front of a crouched and cowering Danielle and Abby. Luke's hand looked badly burned as he cringed, cradling it. You okay? Jacob asked, turning to Luke. Man, Luke replied, it was just the glow of it that did this. Could you imagine what it would have done to these guys? Danielle slowly released Abby before rising to her feet and surveying the layout. In a spontaneous show of jubilation, she threw her arms around Luke. Oh my gosh, thank you, she replied, catching Luke and everyone else off guard. Luke looked uncomfortable as she hugged him emotionally. I'm sorry, just this once for everything I ever said about you, she replied with a sarcastic chuckle. Thank you, idiot. Luke awkwardly comforted Danielle, patting her on the back with his good hand. How did you do that? Abby replied in a surprised manner. I can create wormholes, Luke replied, releasing Danielle slowly. I sent it to an empty void in the middle of nowhere. Abby stared him in the eyes, nodding, affirming his words. Your hand? Danielle replied, cradling the boy's badly burned hand. Light. Her hands emitted light as she transferred her light energy into his hand. When the light dissipated, Luke's hand was like new. Thanks, he replied, moving his hands in a checking manner. His voice crackled as they both awkwardly navigated a banter that wasn't insult-filled for the first time since they met. You do realize you owe me for this also, Jacob replied, turning to him. Danielle smiled, throwing her arms around him. Thanks, Jake. You're the best, she replied. Abby stumbled, falling to her knees, breaking Danielle in mid-speech. Abby! Danielle shot. She rushed over, helping her to her feet. Yeah, that last barrier took everything I had, Abby shot. It should have, said Cadmiel, screaming across the arena as she flashed to her side. How's it going, kiddo? Danielle slowly backed away as Cadmiel stepped in, causing Abby to pause. I'm good, thanks to these guys, Abby shot, pointing at Jacob and Luke. Cadmiel paused as if to be swallowing her pride. Yeah, I know, she replied, turning to Jacob and Luke almost like she was pulling teeth. I know this whole situation,
Hasn't brought out the best in either of our legions, but good looking out. I really appreciate it.
Jacob and Luke nodded, affirming her words. She smiled back as she lifted Abby, taking her weight on her. Danielle patted Abby on the back as she limped away. It seemed painfully depressing as Abby limped away, not saying a word to Danielle. Danielle stood as if to be trying to hold herself together with every step away Abby took. Jacob consoled her with a pat on the back, as Danielle gave a faint smile to try and hide her disappointed demeanor. Just as Abby and Cadmiel made it to the center of the stadium, they stopped in their tracks. Abby fought to hold herself up, as Cadmiel released her cautiously. After fighting for a second to hold herself up, she turned to Danielle as everyone waited with anticipation for her words.
Dani?
Abby replied, lowering her head, clearly shy and hesitant.
Would you mind coming with me to the Med Corps? You know, to catch up.
Danielle teared up at the sound of her words, almost crumpling with happiness. She turned to Luke and Jacob in an asking manner. Hey, don't look at us, Jacob responded. You gave us all you had. You deserve it.
Yeah, I thought you were just some stuck-up prissy chick, but you're all right in my books, Luke replied. I'll be fine. I'll kick this guy's tail all over the arena. Just make sure you keep watching.
Danielle nodded in an accepting manner before giving Jacob and Luke hugs. She trotted, jogging to meet up with Abby. Cadmiel headed for the barrier as the girls headed for their council debriefing. As they did, all the attention turned to Luke. It was his turn now. With everyone gone, the Alphas had 2 fighters left, and they were not going to be easy. Benjamin and this kid Thomas were supposedly as good as it got. I couldn't grasp what was happening before, but now it was abundantly clear. They saved their best for last, and considering who they were, that couldn't be a good thing for us.